Hey everyone, we are back with another update video, and by we, of course, I mean with me as always is Cory. Say hi, Cory.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
So we've got a lot to talk about. So let's start with what's on the screen here. We finally made the final versions of the Megadrive portraits for whenever there's dialogue between characters, which usually happens just before and just after boss fights. And so with the Megadrive, you're wrestling with a quite low color depth for a 16-bit system. The colors you can pick from to make your roughly 62 or 61 color graphics is 512 possible colors. So really smooth gradations are not possible. So that's one limitation. The other limitation is typically any 8x8 pixel tile or any sprite are 15 colors plus a clear color, and most game developers just stick with that. If they need to make a character sprite or a portrait or something, they just pick one of those 16 color palettes and make the art out of that. Right. And we had the realization not too long ago when we were talking about finalizing and polishing up the portraits. During this dialogue, nothing else is really going on screen. The player can't be doing his magic. There's no explosions. There's not a bunch of falcon enemies flying around. So basically there's more sprite power available in that moment. So why not take two different 15 color palettes and two sprites for the portrait overlaid one on top of the other to allow you to just have much more colorful portraits. And that's what these here represent. So you can see, especially for the Megadrive, there's some really quite smooth skin tone ranges, blues, a lot of subtle variety, all in the one portrait, and way more than 15 colors for any one portrait. And to just give you a really quick rough example, these are the two palettes that are being used, and this is also a brightened version of this palette, but I tweaked it just enough to make sure that all of the brightened colors, not only are they not exactly like any of the colors in the palette above, but they also work well as part of a gradient combined with the colors above.
Yeah, we separated that as a dedicated brightened hero palette.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of items.
The top palette is used for the player and a lot of the enemies and other sprites.
Yep.
So we separated that out. We reworked some things for Mega Drive to make sure we always had that palette available.
In our game, we needed to be able to visually communicate and make some things flash brighter or blink. And you can do that by changing the actual palette it's using. But if you do that, everything in the game that uses that palette blinks at the same time.
Right.
You can't just make the one thing blink. So the only way to be able to make one thing blink at a time is to have a whole other 16 color palette dedicated to the brighter version of that palette. And then in the logic of the game, you just say, okay, display yourself with this brighter palette now instead of the other palette. So it'll switch back and forth between using palette 3 and palette 4. And that was the original purpose. But then we realized, hey, we could use this to also enhance the colors and color ranges of these portraits, because while DaemonClaw is very much an arcade game, we want there to be this epic world building that you feel without having to read through huge walls of text or anything. Things should feel rich. You should feel like you're getting an interesting story unfolding. So we really cared what these portraits look like and the quality. They should be like very RPG-like. So anyway, we put in the extra work, and to show you really quickly the difference that this makes as far as color range, I can just really sloppily get rid of the second color palette and then just have ProMotion remap it. And you could see how much rougher the gradations are. Right. And the blues and the skin tones especially.
Yeah, and to add more technical nerdiness, the last two values, the reason that those aren't there is because we reserved those to possibly change per level. So there are a couple of unique values in some of the enemy sprites and stuff as you move along.
And that is true also, thank you for reminding me, Cory, for the portraits. Right. So the cool thing is, this wizard character, by the time his portrait gets displayed, it just so happens the enemies in that level have grays in their palette. That's what these two colors are used for. So you have the white, you have the black, and then you have two grays. But even better, because we're using for the portraits this brightening palette as well, we've got a really nice smooth range of 4 grays plus black and white. So I'm going to quickly retool his portrait to actually make his white facial hair and head hair actually actually gray instead of blue. That was the one thing that I thought was a compromise when I originally did this
yeah,
portrait.
he looks like he's got frosty beard.
Exactly. By the time this video is uploaded and you guys are watching it, he'll have the appropriately... Future Mike might even edit that into the video so you could see how that turned out. And then an update for level 4. The last bit of work that needed to be done for enemies for level 4 was just the boss fight, and Cory is super close to finishing the final art for that, and by the time you see this video, that should be done. And then just before we recorded this video, we had an impromptu meeting, and we came up with some really cool ideas to make the boss fight environment for the level 4 boss really cool. We're not going to share any of those ideas, but you'll see it when you play the game or when you end up seeing Let's Plays and stuff like that. And actually going back to the level 2 boss fight, Cory quite a while ago had made some really nice enhancement art to the environment, including some animated objects.
Yep.
And it's possible Future Mike will edit. It depends on if the guys at Neofid get it working or not before I finish editing this video. But it just adds literally and figuratively more life and more drama and more detail, of course, to the environment. You'll be seeing that pretty soon regardless. And then for the final level of the game, all of the enemies are designed and the graphics are completely finished for all of them except the end of the final level sub-boss, which he's fully designed and his initial frame is done, and it won't take too long to get him finished as well. So that's all shaping up really well. And that's about it for the actual video game graphics side of thing, but then there's all the printed stuff. There's the box cover and the 6 trading cards that the Kickstarter backers are going to get. And so you guys had seen the box cover art, a rough version of it from the Kickstarter campaign, but I marathon worked on it over the course of like 2 weeks to get the level of detail and color balancing and all of that much better. And I've similarly done the same thing with the 6 trading card illustrations, actually doing test prints with a physical CMYK printer you could sort of see behind me, and then making adjustments on my screen on the actual files, and then print again to just make sure it actually looks good in print, because the way it looks on your screen and the way it looks printed out are very different. And I just realized we forgot to mention one other thing about the video game graphics. Another thing we finished very recently was between the levels, there's that intermission scene where you've got the wizard that can see the hero continuing onward to the next environment in his crystal ball. And meanwhile, the wizard is holding the powerful magic artifact that you just got by defeating the boss before the intermission scene. So I had made or started making the rough versions of the artifacts the wizard holding. Those have all been finalized and cleaned up, but just like I showed you with the portraits, how we're using 2 overlaid sprites for those intermission scenes, since there's no need for parallax scrolling, we could do the same thing with the entire screen with the 2 parallax layers. So that was a nice way to quickly and conveniently be able to use 30 or 31 colors, actually 32 counting the background color. So you just make much more colorful intermission scene. There's a good chance by the time you guys see the video, they'll be actually implemented and working. So those are also all done. So theoretically, the last intermission type stuff that needs to be done is just the final celebratory sequence for when you actually beat the game. So now moving on to Neofid side of things and getting the actual functionality working on the Megadrive version of DaemonClaw. As always, we keep making a lot of tickets for things for them to fix and improve, and they go through those at a pretty rapid rate, but also they're still working on the level 4 boss fight, but also simultaneously they've been working on getting the basic enemies of the final level working, and like I said, the artwork is all ready for them as well, so they're going to quickly become final except for like the real fine-tuning, tweaking of the gameplay and stuff. Alright, and there's actually something to update you guys on the Neo Geo side of things, and that is the programmer of that version has continued to get more of the actual gameplay working, but also he had given us the first build based on his new upgraded engine. He even gave us flowcharts of the typical way that a Neo Geo game would boot up for both the AES and MVS versions. Right. And so just yesterday, Cory Cory and I had a scrum to really work out some ideas for what we want on the different screens and how that should flow. And we came up with some really nice ideas that are going to be clear enhancements for the Neo Geo version to put use to its graphical horsepower and the fact that your average Neo Geo cartridge has a lot more storage space on it. So not only did we come up with some great ideas for the general flow of the boot up intro sequence, but we also kind of accidentally came up with some really cool enhancements for the more important aspects of the game during gameplay and potentially cutscenes and even ways to enhance some of the menu or scoreboard screens and stuff of that. But we're going to continue to keep that stuff a secret until it's actually working and can show you guys. But we're definitely excited about that and really looking forward to when we could really start putting that extra work into starting with the Megadrive graphics and enhancing them in every way we can for the Neo Geo version.
Yeah, and for you guys maybe interested in hearing more about those discussions, we did record that Neo Geo discussion for our patrons, so they have access to a lot of these behind-the-scenes sort of things. Yeah.
Yep, and if you guys remember from the Kickstarter, that's actually something we offered as a perk, but you could actually order a boxed DVD that's actually going to have the most important excerpts from all of these creative meetings that Cory and I have had from the beginning of DaemonClaw. That was one of the things we thought would be really cool to offer to our Patreon backers, was literally they get to sit in with us and see not only the exact moments that the ideas come about, but how they come about, and then kind of follow the progress of the game and see how most of these ideas become realities in the game.
There is always the disclaimer of during, brainstorming type discussions that things can change. But another interesting thing is, while our patrons do have access to a lot of these sort of design scrums and stuff that we do, we have recorded a good number of them that are only going to be on the DVD.
Correct. Yeah. And that's a thing. We need to make sure that even our backers that have been following this project for a long time now, they need some surprises too. So we recorded those creative meetings, but they're not going to have access to them until the game is out so that they can more easily avoid spoilers for every aspect of the game.
Exactly. Yeah. We're getting into those conversations. We don't want to give too much stuff away. So
yeah, exactly. The idea is if someone sees something when it's half done and then 3/4 done, there's not going to be that wow factor when they see the finished thing. Yes. So some aspects of the game we want to be a surprise even to the patron.
Yeah. Possibly even some of the printed materials could be spoilerific if you look at them too early.
Exactly. That's why I showed a sliver in our previous video of one of the cards, but there are some of the cards we don't want people to see at all until the games are actually in people's hands. And even then, the current plan is the cards will come with a little wrapper that'll say spoiler. Don't look at these cards until you've played through the game, basically. Who knows if people that do unboxings and playthroughs will honor that. They might just rip it right open and show everyone. But
at that point, we don't have a choice.
Yeah, it's outside of our control, but we will frown quite rigorously in the comment section. Just put some, frowny and sad face. That'll get them. And the last thing to talk about is the actual schedule, which we usually touched on in most videos to some degree. At first, we were so young and naive, to say we're on schedule, which we were at the time. But as is the case with almost every complex software or game development, it doesn't stay that way. And for a long time, we were in the situation where we were late on some things we had scheduled out, but we were also ahead on some other things. Right. But there reaches the point where, like I've said before, DaemonClaw is a classic arcade and console style game. It is not a Metroidvania. So its value and its replay value comes from how much time and effort we've spent into consistently replaying and fine-tuning every aspect of the gameplay. So it just doesn't get boring or even zen, and it just stays fun for the duration. It's a beat the game in one sitting and then want to play it again later that day because it was fun. That's That's the value of games like this. And that takes time. So our plan was for Neofid to get the whole game working as quickly as possible so that then we could play through the whole game over and over and make those tickets I keep talking about, those notes to them. You know, we need to increase this animation speed or movement speed or decrease, or Cory and I might go in and tweak some art. We'll figure out ways it can look even more badass or communicate to the player. That takes time. But now, yeah, we've reached that situation where what we were supposed to do, as was promised in the Kickstarter, is start to make demos available for backers that volunteer to be testers to give us that additional feedback, not only obviously to help find bugs, but to actually give us feedback and help us figure out if there's spots in the game where people that have never played before get a little frustrated or confusing, or something is actually too easy. That's incredibly valuable information, and we need the time for the backers to be able to test and to give us that incredibly valuable feedback so we can polish up the gameplay as much as possible. So that's where we're really behind schedule. Don't get me wrong, I'm saying really as an actually behind schedule. I think technically at the moment we're only a matter of a few weeks behind schedule, and obviously we're putting in every effort to not get any more behind schedule while we are crunching as much as any human should without making themselves into sleepless zombies that do a poor job and actually lower their standards on productivity. We're putting in every effort to stay as close to the schedule as possible, but rest assured everyone, delivering a very high quality and very fun game is far more important to us than hitting the slightly loose and slightly arbitrary exact estimated date on the Kickstarter anyway. And luckily Neofid agrees with us, and they're willing to put in however much extra time as is needed to really put that final polish. We hope you could tell we are sparing no expense of our time and effort and ideas to make every aspect of DaemonClaw on all the platforms as polished and as fun and exciting as we can. And that is and will always be our highest priority. We definitely don't foresee any giant missing of the schedule. No offense to Fonzie, but we're definitely not going to pull a Paprium here.
Right, yeah.
You know, he ended up delivering a very high quality game. Yeah, exactly. And that's the other important thing. You guys will be kept up to date every step of the way. And so, in other words, our goal by the next update video is to have the first demo ready and to actually set it up probably through Steam. So while we and Neofid are working on the actual demo and getting that as polished as possible, we'll be coordinating with the people at Pixel Heart to make it available to play test the demo on Steam. It won't just be like last time during that Steam event where anyone could download the demo.
Right. And that was the PC demo. This is specifically the Megadrive version.
Great point. Yeah. Exactly. Great clarification there. So, yeah, so this will be the first time ever anyone will be outside of us internally will be able to play the actual Megadrive version, obviously through Steam, so it'll be emulated, but it's the actual Megadrive ROM as it's being worked on. But it's going to be exclusive to backers only, and not just all backers, but backers who volunteer and basically do the equivalent of agree to an NDA to not leak videos out on YouTube or talk about any of the stuff they're going to see. Although the first demo is going to be intentionally limited to the opening sequence, splash screen, menu system, and the level 1 and level 1 boss fight. And then the great thing about that is that while the backers are testing and giving feedback on level 1 and the level 1 boss fight, we'll be continuing to add in the rest of the game and to polish not only level 1, but the whole game. So that's the plan, is there will be updates periodically introducing a new level and stuff. But even for the backer testers, we're going to chop it off a little past the halfway mark of the game so that, again, we're going to switch to a bigger pool of internal testers to make sure it's just as polished as the stuff that the backers will get to test. But we want everyone to be actually surprised with the second half of the game in the plots and the graphics and the gameplay and stuff like that. So, but that's the game plan. Yep, go ahead, Cory.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and we intend on having Gareth fully playable in this, and possibly even demonstrate the tag team mode as well.
Exactly. So you'll definitely be able to select one or the other to start. but also that's the goal, is to make it so that you can also choose tag team mode. And to remind everything, what's really cool about tag team mode is you could be just one player, and then you could swap between characters, and that allows the other character to regain health slowly as you're continuing your progress, fighting all the bad guys. But if you actually have a second gamepad and another player there with you, tag team mode can work where it's actually another human player that is controlling the other character, and you're literally tagging off with who is playing in that moment. And again, Cory, that was your idea when we were coming up with the Kickstarter campaign. I think that was a stretch goal. And I'm so glad not only that you had the idea, but that it met that stretch goal, because that seriously adds a whole other level of fun and being able to share the experience of the DaemonClaw gameplay with other people. But yeah, that's about it for this update video. Thanks as always for watching and everyone's support, and we'll be back again soon with another update.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.